Alright, hello everybody. This is AW. Another fine day. Actually, we've been having a pretty nice set of few days this week. It's rained a few times, but it's not a lot of rain. It's mostly been overnight, and not too much, but it makes for a very, very nice day, even though, when you have a nice clear sun, we got some nice clouds, and it's nice and cool. I'd say it's probably around 70, but with the wind it feels a little bit colder, but it's cold enough that, or warm enough that just a light sweater is comfortable. So what's on my mind? Not much, besides the stuff on Chinese philosophy, which if you don't follow my blog, well, I published a piece this last week about Chinese metaphysics and Hegel. Not that long, I think. Excuse me. Just kind of a summary of the main points of interest for me. Besides that, I have another piece that was the other half of that piece. I just decided to break them into two pieces, which is one about ethics, Chinese ethics, Confucian ethics, mostly ethics of the Neo-Confucians, the Tao Shui. And it's mostly done. I just need to go through it a couple of times more and clean it up to my satisfaction. I'll see what I do with that. Also been, I've kind of stopped halfway on the Deleuze book, partly because, frankly, not been feeling too well. My best friend is not been doing very well, and when your close friends are not doing well, you can't exactly be feeling all that well. So I've been very productive, but at the same time it's sort of a productivity that it's kind of a coping mechanism, I suppose, where I'm trying to busy myself with something to get my mind off of the stuff that stresses me out. But I do have some stuff on the Deleuze book, which I've been working on. I might do some series of videos, not long ones actually, or at least the intent is not to make them long. Who knows? Just doing some simple PowerPoint presentations, which basically summarize and present the stuff I've learned from the book that I find interesting, and concepts that well, like when it comes to Deleuze, there's not that much on the internet as far as I can tell. Most people focus on 1,000 plateaus. You don't really find anybody explaining concepts from difference and repetition. And that book is certainly all about difference and repetition. Some very interesting stuff, which might be like 10 15-minute concepts per each. Well, 10 to 15-minute videos per each concept. And there's not that many, but we'll see. Every time I come out here with the intent of, well, it's a nice day, I want to enjoy a walk, I just want to be out of nature and de-stress a little bit, and have it in mind, I'll make a video. My mind blanks when I actually get to the place. It's like it's definitely not the worst thing in the world, but it's annoying. I mean, other stuff in my life. For those of you who don't know, you should know. Maybe I should make it more obvious in all the stuff that my social media. I got a Discord group, which is where I have most of my interaction with people. I answer questions, I do live reading groups, but sometimes you get people who are I don't know, not your typical person. You know, dealing with assholes, that's fine. You gotta deal with them anyways in your life, and most of them I just take with stride and humor them as long as they humor me. And then once they bore me, I usually just end up giving them a role in which they're in a quarantine channel where I never check. So, you know, people can waste their time with them as long as they want, and they can feel that they have an audience of fools for their own foolishness, but I'm not going to bother with it. You know, they can stick around and read the rest of the channels where somewhat, I want to say serious, somewhat honest discussion takes place. But occasionally you get people who come in who want something more than just like, hey, I got a question about Hegel, or what do you think about this, or something. They want me to be, I don't know, they want me to validate what they think. You know, they want me to be some kind of guru or spiritual teacher, or like, you know, some kind of exemplar for them, and I'm none of those things, quite frankly, and I do not pretend to be. I just find that odd, and yeah, some people are disturbed, but you know, I've always made it clear, especially when I notice somebody seems to, even if they say they aren't, seems to start becoming obsessed with me, and I tell them, look, man, and they've all been men so far, you know, that's just how it is. Don't know what you think you're trying to find from me, but I'm only going to disappoint you. So don't put me on a pedestal. Don't expect that I am some wise man. Don't expect that I am some kind of ethical person here who's like some very odd, but you know, admirable people trying to fix the world in some way. I'm not. You know, I'm just a regular person living a regular life with pretty regular problems, and on my free time, of which luckily I have occasionally a lot of, I study things of interest to me, and I put things out there of those things I study, in case anybody else is looking for some kind of explanatory insight or help for those things. And if people find it helpful, great. And if they don't, great. I'm not seeking to be famous. I'm not seeking to grow an audience. Excuse me. You know, which is why you see that my YouTube channel is pretty sparse on content for a long time. It's just I don't see the point beyond just, you know, wanting to be in the algorithm and gain an audience. You know, I could do these increasingly popular, stupid, like sub 2 minute, like explain dialectics or Hegel or Marx or anything that I know. And believe it or not, I have a flair for the dramatic and creative, and I enjoy it, but not for that reason. And sometimes I get ideas to do that, but I just don't see the point. To me, it feels like lying, honestly, when you make stuff that you know is one-sided, incomplete, gives a partial understanding, which most people won't understand. Is a misunderstanding if they take it only at that level. So I don't do it. Anyways, I bring that up as a tangent because someone on my server was complaining that I claim it's an educational server, but they're like, it's terrible. To which I responded, you should go and check out other educational servers and come back. I haven't been on that many Discords, but I've been on so many philosophical Discords, and what I have found out is pretty much all of them are dead. Serious discussion is not 100% fun. Most people don't seem to be that into it. You can't assign people, let's read this chapter this week and let's get together and discuss, next week, at some day, at some time for, maybe an hour or two. That doesn't happen. It doesn't work. I've never seen it work. Those things die off so fast. In fact, I mean, the longest running study group Discords that I know of are the ones in which there is somebody who knows their shit, who is actively doing live discussions, usually in voice chat, because otherwise people do not have the wherewithal to read all the shit that you write, and you can't really talk about much things in detail, quite frankly. Like, the only thing to discuss philosophy is you're either discussing texts, and you're discussing very specific things about them, clarifying them and explaining them, or you're just kind of doing the pop philosophy thing on YouTube or any other social media, and you're just presenting these abstract generalities, which I don't know, I find nothing interesting about, quite frankly. Very rarely, unless it's something that you already were sort of looking into, and then finding out something about it that you didn't expect draws you in, like Chinese philosophy did with me. I watched Brian Van Norden's videos, which are indeed a lot about generalities and whatnot, but they were very pertinent generalities insofar as I knew shit all about him, and the stuff that I did learn from his channel got me interested in, like, oh, well, there's a whole lot more to this than I had thought. So that's partly what I ended up reading. So to this person, I told him, look, you may not like this server, but that's like your opinion, man. And he's like, you let too many people shit post and whatever. I originally had that policy of like, don't fucking shit post on my server, or specifically for this and that. I've come to realize nobody likes servers like that. Most people aren't there to be serious. Most people aren't there to be in hardcore study. Very few of them join because they even have much questions. People are just looking for places to discuss, places where there seems to be some kind of life at all. And therefore, you gotta have some leeway for stupid discussions, waste of time, some stuff that, teeters on pathetically edgy, but, whatever, teenagers, and yes, it's mostly teenagers. So, so long as people aren't being obnoxiously rude, just having a general troll environment, I just kind of have a lax way I run my server, where the main thing I want to see is people be honest. At least have some honest engagement. And if you're not honest, well, then, it doesn't get you banned or anything. But if you're talking to me, you definitely piss me off. Look at those snow caps. But I don't ban anybody for just being a moron. Most of the time, I just either seize the conversation, or if I'm having a conversation with somebody else that is somewhat honest, and someone breaks in with things that seem pretty trollish or quite frankly stupid, then I just tell them, look, please shut up, get out of the conversation. You have no place here. And sometimes these people, frankly, kill a conversation that was going perhaps nowhere. Usually, yes, it goes nowhere. Like this weekend, I had a conversation with people, two people, over a couple of days on physics and metaphysics, and about how physics is not the hard science people think. Physics is not a very solid science at all. Most people don't know this. They don't want to believe it. But it is what it is. And you don't even need empirical examples. It's not even required. There are just some basic conceptual issues of which you should become aware of and notice, well, this thing that I thought was gospel truth, and it's like everybody agrees, right? People are like, how dare you? Do you deny Albert Einstein was right? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. For those of you who don't know, I don't hide it. It just doesn't come up as a topic on my videos very much. I'm a highly unorthodox person. I know. I'm not going to tell you, oh, I believe. I know. Most hard science that we think is hard science is just utter bullshit. It is based on fictions. It is incoherent conceptual nonsense. And it is just highly assumptive. And there are no facts behind it. This whole idea of evidence, and like, I was having a discussion with somebody, particularly about time and time dilation. And they're like, how can you deny time dilation is real? I'm like, I deny it because it's just fucking clocks, man. And they're like, but we can't do GPS without general relativity. Sure we can. Same way we do just about everything. You can always reverse engineer shit empirically. In fact, there are empirical aspects to the way GPS is calculated, which are just external to the original theories, where you got to add in fudge factors to correct for things that the original theory has nothing to say about. The whole thing is about noticing the relationship of clocks and their desynchronization. And so, to measure GPS, you got to have 3 clocks, 3 positional systems, 1 on the ground, 2 above, so to say. And the main thing is to keep them synchronized. And you can actually empirically set up equations for the range of desynchronization that you observe and you expect and correct for it. It's basically that. Sure, if you have a GR, general relativity, there's certain things that just make the math a little bit cleaner. But beyond that, it's not a solid thing. I didn't even bring that up because, quite frankly, I'm not going to get into empirical debates with somebody over such things. The empirical details are, as far as you care and I care, and even scientists, can be debated endlessly. It's, unless I am able to do experiments myself, I got nothing to say about that beyond, I trust this source, you trust that source. And we can't really come to an agreement just based on empirical stuff. So the main point of argument was just that time dilation, or what we see in time dilation, is not really that mysterious as people think. It's clock acceleration and clock retardation. Clocks slow down, clocks go faster. What that means has nothing to do with some magical connection to a whole dimension we call time. It just doesn't. Insofar as the sun, which is over there over that hill, the sun is basically a giant clock for us. If the Earth somehow started rotating slower, you wouldn't thereby conclude that time as such has slowed down. That's a ridiculous conclusion. If your clock slows down, that doesn't mean that time itself in general has slowed down. That's just nonsense. That would be the same also as thinking that a fridge is a time machine. After all, a fridge slows down the decay rate of food. And what is time ultimately, insofar as physics is concerned? Well, the way we read time is cycles of motion. And is it the cycles that say anything? No. It's the motion. Time is rates of motion measured by cycles of motion, of which we arbitrarily choose one and say, this is a regular enough cycle that we will measure all other cycles by this. So clock slows down. Okay, what does that tell you? That tells you, especially when we send stuff in space, by the way, the clocks that slow down in space are atomic clocks, of which many we get the reading of a second by the decay rates that they have. Well, not decay rates, but the radiation emissions that they have of some sort, or just certain kinds of cycles that we read by them. If a clock slows down in space or speeds up, all that tells you is, well, at that level, the motion, or whatever determines the motion of these atoms, has caused a slowdown. Why? We don't know. This has nothing to do with such a thing as time itself. It just doesn't. If time generally slowed down, you'd have to do quite a bit more to prove that, and even then you wouldn't really prove it. You'd only prove that a local area of space somehow has something going on where whatever is in has, beyond a certain point, generally slowed down. But just like a fridge is not generally slowing down time as such, but slowing down the rate, when it works by slowing down the rate of general movement of biotic or biological entities of some sort, be they animal or vegetable, such that just that general slowdown will slow down the rate of decay, and the thing will last longer. It also because it's cold, it also generally makes it so that the usual bacteria and other things that would decay your food also don't spawn. So they're not there to decay it. But at the chemical level, is your fridge slowing down chemicals? No, chemicals are probably generally not affected by the coldness of a fridge. Not that they can't be. You get things cold enough, and we know that we can get things affected by that lack of motion down to even atomic levels. We can definitely get it down to synthetic chemical levels. So, but generally the change of a typical fridge on, atomic lifespans is not that big, as far as we can tell. So, there may be a slowdown of a certain kind of level of motion, but that doesn't mean that there's a universal slowdown in motion, which would be misunderstood, and understandably so, as a general slowdown of time. The point is, that was a discussion that with two people that ended up going for almost 6 hours, 3 hours with one person, and then like 3 hours with the other person. And it went nowhere. You know, these people are like, you're just insane, AW. You don't believe in science, you're a science denier. And I'm like, you're the science denier, motherfucker. You know, and honestly, that's how I see it. And I'm stronger than that on that position. It is how it is. It's not just how I see it. A lot of scientists, so-called, or science students, do not understand the reality of how science actually works, and they just think that they're just facts. Well, there aren't. There's a lot of interpretation that goes on, and there's a lot of things where the interpretation depends upon your beliefs which are utterly groundless, beliefs which have nothing to do with any rational reality. You know, I mean, people are surprised. How can you say Einstein is wrong? You know, Einstein had 160 IQ. Or was it 180, 200? I don't even care. Doesn't matter to me. Yeah, Einstein had a very nice mathematical idea. As to the reasoning for why certain things were connected in his mathematical idea, they're complete nonsense. There's no reason why you would posit that space, time, and light have some kind of special relationship. There is none. There's no rationale between, you know, in thinking that light is a constant speed, invariant of frame reference, in which itself has some kind of special connection, such that light does not experience time. You know, you got light speed and time slows down to zero, and you know, for your perspective, things might just well be infinite speed. That's a whole lot of nonsense. You know, that's just baseless. That's baseless assumption, metaphysical speculation of the worst kind. We know where he got this stupid idea. It's from a dream of riding a lightning bolt. And these guys, one of them was like, no, that's not where you got it from. You got it from this other experience. I'm like, you're thinking backwards, man. I'm talking about the inception of this concept, not the stuff that people retroactively use as, look, here's evidence. Yeah, shout up your ass. Evidence is what you conceive as evidentiable. You know, meaning that what you believe is the structure of objective reality is what you believe can actually be present to you in anything that is going to prove anything in objective reality. Which is why, you know, religious people and you know, non-religious people, secular people, well, I'm not going to give the honor of saying, oh, people who believe in science. You shouldn't believe in science. You should know science. Science should not be a religion, but unfortunately it basically is. But the point of that is that insofar as you have these assumptions about what the objective reality is, everything will confirm your fucking theory. If you think everything is matter, anything that doesn't confirm matter, you're just going to say, well, that's just made up. That's misunderstood. It's being misinterpreted. And here's my interpretation that somewhere in the future, you know, we'll find out what the mechanism is. You know, sure, I can't explain consciousness, but you know what? It is material. Everything's material. So we'll find out later, sooner or later. Look, you know, neurology's going to get there. We're gonna be like printing brains and artificial intelligence at some point, and then you'll see, you know, it was all just matter in the end anyways. Yeah, sure, whatever. And likewise, you know, the religious person, you can show them like everything and they'll say, yeah, okay, you know, I'll accept that, but you know, behind that is God. Behind that is some kind of spiritual world or whatever. And I'm just being hyperbolic with these examples, but they are people who exist. They are people who have such views. All that to say that some people get on my nerves sometimes, and boy. But anyways, somebody asked in my last video what I thought about AI developments so far. I actually have some things that I've written regarding this, but I've never published them on any of my blogs or made videos about them, I think. General thoughts on that is AI is a misnomer. It's not intelligent, quite frankly. Intelligence is something else. For some people whose fear is that there will ever be such a thing as a general intelligence, don't worry, there won't be. Machines are stupid, quite literally. They just don't think, they'll never think. In order to get a machine to think, you'd have to make it alive, really alive. People are like, what if machines become sentient? And by the way, a distinction most people don't know about: sentient and sapient are not the same thing. Sentient is your feelings, subjective experience. Sapience is knowing, intelligence. AI will never become sentient. There is no point at which you just put in happiness and pain, or pleasure and pain .exe on a machine, and suddenly, you made it feel. It just kind of, it became an internal subjective self-representation and experience. No, that's stupid. That isn't how things work. I mean, I know people nowadays are caught up with, look at that. Big old tree. People are caught up with the idea of emergence and strong emergence. Emergence is stupid. I say this as somebody who at one point kind of considered it. At one point I kind of considered myself a panpsychist, and I'm like, well, it sort of makes sense. Although panpsychism is not strong emergence. Panpsychism is just weak emergence. They don't say, oh, consciousness just suddenly arises. They're like, well, no, consciousness was always there. It's just at some point, things just kind of come together, and there is a higher level of subjective experience, which is still bullshit, but whatever. Emergentism is basically naturalist wishful thinking and magical thinking. More so the latter, quite frankly. No explanation as to how things arise. It's just like, hey, you get to a certain point, and this new quality pops into existence. And some of you might be surprised. You're like, well, isn't Hegel an emergentist? Emergentist. No, he's not. And, look at these nice little flowers. Hegel's not an emergentist, despite the fact that it might seem that way. Even if, you read the typical being, nothing, and becoming, you're like, well, doesn't becoming emerge out of being a nothing? No. No, it does not. What is revealed in being nothing is that they were only because there was already becoming. What there is in becoming is the realization that becoming was only because there was already existence. What is revealed in existence is that existence only was because there was reality and negation. And in reality and negation, you realize that they only were because there was something. And then something only is because there was an other. And these are only because there was being for other and being in itself. And then these were only because there was determination and constitution. And determination and constitution only were because there was a limit. And the limit is only because there is a finite entity in which it is united with something. And then the finite is only because there is restriction and the ought. And restriction and the ought only are because they are the concrete finite. And the concrete finite only is because there's other finites. And then these only are because there is actually the infinite. And so on, up until the absolute idea, and up until the rest of the system into nature, spirit, and absolute spirit. So nothing really emerges in Hegelianism. It's always already been there. The ground on which what emerges is finite things, and they don't really emerge. They're just a necessary consequence of a development of the infinite in relationship to itself. So, emergentism is just stupidity. So, anyways, you'll never have a machine that is sentient unless somebody decides to be a mad scientist and stick some kind of brain apparatus into these kinds of machines, which we have done already. The U.S. military and surely other militaries like China's and Russia's across the world have and are dabbling into biocomputation, in which I know for a fact we have used rat brains, which have been put into connect hooked up to a flight simulator, and these rat brains are really good at flying. Think about that. It's kind of a this is like straight out of a sci-fi. There were sci-fi things like this, but they weren't as they didn't have the imagination to make it as horrible. Although I'm pretty sure some of them did. This idea that we could harness animals in ways that you could not imagine as a normal person who doesn't have any awareness of these things. Like for example, what is it? There's a book about uplift. There's a concept of uplifting in which we've kind of like made other animals more intelligent and raised them up to sapience like we have. And so, one of the examples there is that dolphins are spaceship navigators because they are hooked up to the ships in a way that they feel the ship as a whole as if it was their own body. So, they can do maneuvers in ways that somebody who's not attuned to a machine in that kind of relationship or to a body in that kind of relationship just can't do. Which makes perfect sense. But now, instead of having a nice dolphin or something, you have a fucking just raw brain, grown in a vat or something, of which, we don't really know the structure of it beyond that it happens to respond pretty well. So, what is this thing experiencing? We don't really know. In the flight simulator example of the rat brain or mouse brain, I forget what it was. Is that thing seeing? Certainly it's feeling something, like it's neurons on a fucking circuit board where, signals go here and there, and somehow this thing knows how to respond with a proper electrical responses from the neurons, which then are read by the computer and used as inputs, like motor inputs. It is, what is going on within that subjective consciousness. Probably not that much, but it's enough that it's highly functional. So, could that be generally done for a lot of machines? Probably. I would not be surprised. But that's not, artificial intelligence. That's you taking something that we already know and that already manifests its own living consciousness of sorts, sentience, and plugged it into another system in which it becomes a sort of outer encasing body with a certain kind of representation for us as to what we see the machine seeing, but whether the internal neuronal consciousness of that thing, sees or hears or smells or touches or whatever, who knows? Wouldn't have to, just to have motor responses. You don't have to have those things. It's a very simple thing. But that's what it would take to get sentience out of a thing. To get sapience, to get intelligence out of those things. Basically impossible. Basically impossible. I've actually thought about this a few times over the years. every once in a while about, well, maybe there's a way. Maybe you could have some kind of machinic intellect that doesn't. Some kind of machinic intellect that doesn't have sentience. You know, it's just this empty formal response. But that doesn't make any sense. Intelligence requires sentience. You can't really have an intelligent system that does not have sentience, because sentience is basically the motivating, generative, living factor of intelligence. Just look at depressed people. Depressed people usually have a fine enough brain. They can think. What they can't do is motivate themselves to do anything, because motivation is the general factor that leads not just the sentient faculties and activities, but also the thinking ones. You don't really think about this, but it is true. Your thought is always motivated. And I don't mean that in like, oh, well, it's like sort of this empiricist thing, like the thought is the slave of the emotions, or whatever you might call them. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is thought itself is emotional. You know, something like what I do, which is I enjoy reading philosophy and thinking about it. Thought itself is a desire and a satisfaction for me. People naturally have the desire and the satisfaction in searching for explanations and getting them. There's actually no person in the world who does not actually desire to think and enjoy thinking. Now, not everybody ever comes to the level of pure thinking, but they certainly, whenever somebody gets a chance, between having this disposition of merely having to believe and accept something that you don't understand, and having the capacity and opportunity to actually understand it and to give a rational explanation, everybody will grab the second every fucking time. No questions asked. If you can actually make, if religious people who have these mystical experiences, if they could somehow explain this, well, to a rational satisfaction, oh, they would love. And whenever they find themselves capable of comprehending such a thing, they love it. Because it's, it's something that allows you to communicate things to other people, and also to justify things to other people and yourself. And people love the sense of justification, of being justified, of being right. And, so everything you do is motivated by, yes, stuff like hunger is a motivation for, like, I'm hungry, I need to go eat food, and therefore you have the reasoning process, I got to go cook something or buy something, to sustain my life. Oh, it's not really how we think. You're just like, I'm hungry, I want a burger, or some soup, or whatever it is that you would eat. I eat just about anything, except oftentimes, quite frankly, I'm into other things, and I just don't pay attention to my hunger many times. Intelligence is motivated. It needs the faculties of desire, and the desire has the component of recognition. Animals. I have talked about this before, but I don't make specific videos about it. It's usually in these rambling videos. Animals think. They just don't think conceptually. Meaning that obviously they operate under the structures of reasoning. Most animals certainly have the causal faculties, in which they can connect things they see, and they're like, okay, first this, then that. If this, then that. And of course, they don't become conscious of this, but they operate and think in it, and they respond through it. Likewise, they recognize the difference between living things and dead things, and which is, a very important factor for animals of many kinds. Well, pretty much of all kinds, but if you don't have that, that's usually because you're some kind of some kind of entity whose purpose generally is just to be eaten by something else. But so even animals who are normally we don't consider self-conscious are actually operating under self-consciousness, because they're a consciousness that recognizes other consciousnesses. They just don't mirror from that consciousness back to themselves. That's the difference between a just regular consciousness and a self-consciousness. A regular consciousness is like, I know other things, and operating in self-consciousness is, I know other things, and I know that one thing, has, or appears to be conscious, and therefore, I need to pay special attention to it. Which is why animals, you go out into the woods and you're moving around, or yammering like me. Animals pay attention to all kinds of new sounds, new smells, and all that jazz, new sights. But they don't thereby, reflect upon themselves. They're aware of other living beings as some sort of living beings, but they don't conceptualize this, and they're not aware that from that living being of, I'm conscious of it and it's conscious of me. They implicitly operate on that, but they don't actually cognitively come to that. By the way, you can't really see it. I don't know. It doesn't seem like on a phone you really, or on video, unless you have like some kind of cinematic camera of sorts, or you can do it on a camera. I've seen it, but you have to take a little bit of equipment and programming. Special programs to do it. You can't see how beautiful this is. When you have this kind of crisp, clear light, the world is a little bit wet. It's rained yesterday. The soil is noticeably still wet, and you notice this in winter mostly. I don't know how to describe it. I would describe it. There's a sense that light is colder, and that somehow it's crisper, especially after rain. Especially after rain, like there's a clarity and crispness and coolness of light that is aesthetically striking to me. It's one of my favorite visual and natural phenomena. And likewise, when you have there's something about like sunlight at the end of the day, getting close to sunset. There's a quality to it that it's and just the same thing with with the light at dawn. Though you'd think like, well, they should just be qualitatively pretty similar, just in inverse, but it doesn't feel that way. The way light is at dawn and the way you experience it at dusk is noticeably different, and it's not just a mere experiential inversion. I've never actually thought about it. I'm not a very morning person, so I don't really pay attention to the dawn that much. It's very rare. Anyways, that's just a complete other tangent. Where was I? Motivated intelligence. Yes, animals being in self-consciousness, even though they're not for themselves self-conscious. In order for you to have generalized intelligence, which is conceptual intelligence, you have to have emotions, you have to have consciousness, and you have to have, most importantly, self-conscious, because self-conscious is the intuitive factor of universal self-reflection. There's nothing about self-consciousness that doesn't or that does some kind of formal self-reflection. It just spontaneously self-reflects, at many times. You can do it once you become aware of this. Of course, you can do it at will. But as you're growing up as a child or whatever, self-reflection just naturally comes to happen. Nobody has to teach you it. It just, there's a point at which the brain has developed this capacity, the cognitive faculties are in such a way, and events come in such a that you are, as a child, just, it just happens that you first self-reflect, and you think the I am without saying the I am, and you notice that I am me. This is that's my parents. This is the world. Those are those things. And before that, before you even thought it, you've already engaged it in the very way in which you desire. Hegel builds off the whole concept of self-consciousness from desire. That self-consciousness recognition fundamentally is first rooted in the desire of desire, which is love. The desire for love. The child desires its mother, the mother desires its child, and the most important thing about that is just that desire desires that another desire desires it. And you first feel this rather than conceptualize it. It takes a long, long time for you to ever conceptualize this, really. Many people, one would say, go throughout their whole life and never really comprehend it, never really become aware of what this really is. So anyways, that's just a general comments about why you shouldn't be afraid that there will be some general AI intelligence that's going to become smarter than you. Smarter than you at calculation, sure. Undoubtedly. I mean, we have these things that already are. But, that's no different than the idea that, even math, for example. Like, this is actually probably the best one. Computers can't do math. You're like, what are you talking about? It's like the first things computers ever did. No, computers can't even compute. Like, the way math works is because math is formal, and formality is external objective relationships on a conceptual level. Obviously, then, calculators do a damn good job of representing the computation of formal structures, which can be represented as external objects in certain kind of relationships, and all you have to do is just make a proper mapping for that, and you're good, which is why calculators work, to give us these wonderful results. But mathematics is really a conceptual affair. Real mathematicians are the people who make up the way math works. They're the people who develop the formal structures and functions to begin with and the rules of operation. No machine will ever do that. Now, you can be clever and set up the machine just like, let it just make up rules and, just brute force generate things. Yeah, okay, sure. And I'm sure that, that something interesting might come up, just like something interesting comes up when people just make up arbitrary rules and say, like, let's just go crazy and let's see where this goes. All right, yeah, a machine can do that, but that's not the very interesting stuff. The machine couldn't justify the things for you, couldn't explain to you the actual reasoning beyond just like formal stuff, and the formal stuff is not that interesting, quite frankly. Okay, I just decided that this and that, have this relationship, and that's just that. Yeah, that's fine. Machines can do that, but machines can't do something like what classical mathematicians were doing, which they were trying to develop concepts and explanations as to what it means to have certain kinds of numbers and operations and blah, 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 blah. You're not going to get a computer that can do what Ramanujan did. You're not going to get a computer that can do what Euler did. You can't even get a computer that can do what I do. And yeah, I'm no mathematician, but I have some interest in the foundations of mathematics, as you know from an infamous video on my channel, which You got a lot of downvotes from the mathematical community, but fuck them. I still stand by everything I said in that video, because the book I reviewed was pretty damn good. Very simple, and it's very simple philosophy stuff, but you know, people who are trained in details and not in concepts can't understand such things. But you know, as for can we create some kind of generalized intelligence that might kill us? Oh yeah, definitely. You know, there's plenty of things in which, suppose you put an artificial intelligence in charge of, you know, deciding whether we launch a nuclear bomb or not. Could that kill us? And you know, is that more likely to kill us than a human being is? I think so. Certainly. You know, people don't realize how many times we've been oh so close to fucking ending ourselves during the Cold War. And the only reason things did not end is because rational human beings who just thought to themselves, even if this seems to be what it is, we won't be the first to do it. You know, false, there's plenty, you know, like, and it's not just being able to first to do it, is having the rationale, thinking like, this can't be right, you know, they can't have launched this. You know, there's plenty of times in which both sides got false alarms of, you know, nuclear launch detected, but no nuclear launch had actually happened. And it was, you know, a spur of the moment decision by a human being to say, you know what, no, I don't think so. You know, my gut feeling and my faith in humanity tells me this can't be possible. We're just going to hold off on this. You know, does a machine have gut feelings? You know, not that gut feelings are much of anything to go by, but hey, you know, it saved us. And maybe there's something to it. Plenty of other things, you know. You mechanize things a bit too much, and sure, yeah, well, the system works. It works great. When certain things go wrong, even the most darndest things that, you know, humans would have no problems with, get fucked. But that's just the way that the whole reality of such things works. Beyond that, AI is actually increasingly more impressive than people are aware of, quite frankly. You know, only recently have people become aware of the whole, you know, AI-generated art. You know, I put that in quotes for a reason. That is not even the most impressive things, people. That is not the most impressive things. There are AIs which are now being used to create structural engineering models. You know, you suppose, you know, there's a thing I watched one time, and it's already from years ago, probably more than 5 years now, where, you know, they kind of took this thing, put a car, and they're like, well, you know, let's race cars work in certain ways, and what you want with race cars is obviously a high level of efficiency of certain ways. You know, frames for cars are designed in certain ways for certain things, and they're like, but you know, we can only, as humans, we can only do so much, you know, in our testing environments. There's a limit of time, space, place, and money, and materials. But with you know, these AI programs, you can just generate good enough look at that You can generate, enough good enough physics parameters in which you at the level that you want them, you're going to get them. And so these people put on sensors on various parts of a car, find out like that, found out where it is that most physical stress is happening, what kind of they had all this great information about the kind of materials they had, what kind of materials they wanted to make it, and then just have the program just brute force develop all these different models and slowly approximate, or rather quickly approximate, within a week, the frame structure, which would maximize the strength of the frame to withstand the forces that it will undergo, as well as to reduce the materials used, to reduce the weight, but to keep it all salient. And they did it. Kind of looked a pretty funky, sort of web-like structure, but that's how actually nature works. You look at these trees. What's the deal with the fractal structure of trees? Well, kind of there are physical reasons for that. There's a certain kind of way in which nature is extremely good at the calculation of efficiencies, which we are not. For example, as far like I remember that years ago, and this goes along with biocomputation and all these other things. They tried to say they wanted to find out, well, if we wanted to actually build nowadays the most efficient lines for, say, the subway in England, how do we do that? Sure, there's a lot of calculations and computations and figuring things out. And they did an experiment in which, fungi, particularly slime mold, seem to have a proclivity for being very good at developing their paths in search for, sugars to the most minimal effort. Let's see what kind of path a slime mold on a certain map of the city could do. They had it, and they put out the nodes of where the entrances would be, where where it was actually possible, and the thing over a couple of days grew and starts its way out. And once it found this source of sugars, it just kind of receded back from the non-optimal spaces. And after they did the studies of the paths that it generated, they found out that indeed the stupid thing turned out to have indeed generated the optimal set of pathways that connected all these entrances and exits. Pretty great. Pretty great. You haven't seen it, but increasingly stylized videos are becoming certain things. I've seen videos of people who just take regular everyday videos and they're like, well, make this look like a Pixar movie. And yeah, sure, for right now. It is immensely computationally taxing. You need a pretty damn good computer and you need a couple days. But it's impressive. It is impressive. Such things, however, are not intelligence. Such things are, once you find out how these things work, it's just the same simple thing over and over and over. A lot of it is the way that pattern recognition works is, well, you give it a pattern. First, you have to give it the pattern. These things do not actually learn from no pattern at all. You have to give it a pattern. You have to say, I want something that looks like this. And you train it on various images in various ways to look like that, so that it can recognize it as well as generate it as needed. And because you feed it so much background data of variations, the thing then obviously then has a shitload of variations to go with, and and it can mix and match them. And so long as they are within the parameters required, it will match it. what people are surprised by, and indeed it is at first surprising, is that the way it can do this and transfer styles and all these other things, beautiful, quite frankly, very, very nice. It is impressive. It's not ontologically impressive to me. It still does not manifest intelligence. It just, here's a thing that people don't realize. Reality is a lot more formal than you think. Not that formality rules it, but that there's a formal aspect to reality, to existence, even to me and you, which, because we are a certain kind of being that only uses formality to a certain extent, we don't see, and even if we wanted to, we usually can't catch just on, the regular, everyday observation of things. When you gather mass data like we have today, what has been found out is indeed that there is a level of formality which at first may seem, quite frankly, scary. What was it? Years ago, I saw there was a study by a corporation that's just an information aggregate in England that used Facebook as Facebook public data. From 13 points on your profile, they can find what kind of person you are, what kind of personality you have, what your sexuality is, and these 13 points had nothing to do a lot of the times with something you would expect. You liking such and such a song, which was not tied. There was nothing like sexual about it, for example, but there was some kind of random song, or it seems random to me, which they found out that if you like that song, if you had this other seemingly other random data point and another one, they could above 95% guess correctly that you were gay or straight. And just from looking at it without context, you're like, how could you do that? Well, we're a lot more formal than you think. There are things about us that our cognition is very formal. It's it's the ideal of reading a personality profile. If you watch crime shows and whatnot, one of the big things that people make of is there are certain investigators who are they're sort of psychologists, but they're more of just these formalists who create the criminal profile, and they're like, it's somebody's going to have these kind of characteristics, they're going to have these kind of tics, and so lo and behold, most of the time in the shows they were right. I doubt that works as well in reality, but in principle, it actually makes perfect sense. And you can notice that most people, quite frankly, are walking stereotypes, and you think not me, I'm not a walking stereotype, I'm a unique individual. No. Trust me, you're a walking template, so am I. You don't want to believe it, but it's true. I notice it. There are certain ways in which I am, and in which other people with similar dispositions are. That may be surprising at first, but it's actually not surprising when you think about it. That there are only really so many variations of personality. Nobody's really this completely, utterly unique snowflake. The way you look at the world is just beyond the comprehension of everybody else. It's like people nobody understands me. No, the more you think that way, the more of a walking stereotype you are. The more one has to understand that you're probably the easiest book to read out of them all. So there's a lot of formality in our reality, and so why one would be surprised that in the things that are possible to represent by a machine, that they would have any trouble finding patterns and using them. within an art style, there are patterns. Like the fact that an AI can recreate a Van Gogh style, filter for just about anything you want it to, is not that surprising. All you need is enough Van Gogh paintings, and there's a few of them. Run them as inputs. The main thing about other things is you have these general parameters of lighting here and there, the outline for sure, and other things. So it's not that surprising. Whether that is art, maybe. The AI is not an artist. You still, as a human being, have to tell it a prompt. And I played around with some of these. I'm not impressed, but I'm not very good with the prompts. So I've seen stuff that I'm like, oh, that's impressive. That'd be great. The greatness of this, quite frankly, I don't know why people are worried about it. It's like, oh, well, what if AI does better art than humans do? No, never. All the stuff that I've seen is good. It's not just like, well, give it the AI and just get the AI and just tell it, make great art. And it'll just pump out a banger. And you'll be like, oh my God. No, that's not what happens. What happens is a human being has... Ooh, it's a little creek here. Human being writes a prompt, you know what you're looking for in a general sense, and you just have the thing generate a whole bunch of things. The more you know what you're looking for, the better the thing can actually be. And a lot of the times it's not going to be perfect. So in many ways, you also, for now, in the future, I think it's going to get much better. Obviously, we're just at the beginning. In the future, there'll be a point at which the thing can make hands properly, in which it can make, it'll understand. The algorithms will be able to filter out what is and what isn't a proper pattern. A lot of this is just training, just further training of the algorithm to mark out the things that you want it to do, so that it can do them. A lot of this stuff, for me, is fantastic. I'm not afraid of it. If you're an artist, I'm sorry, get with the times. Make use of these things yourself. Don't be a dinosaur. Sure, you can be a dinosaur, but don't get mad that other people are going to be using this thing for various things. As far as personalized art goes, that's great. Before you had to go and actually pay somebody a commission, and if you're actually paying somebody a fair price for a commissioned artwork of any significant kind, by the way, it seems to me that anything below probably $500, even for a little portrait or something, stylized, is barely worth what you're paying, because it's a lot of skill goes into artistry. A lot of people think, oh well, you can make this in 2 hours. Yeah, it took a decade for that person to practice and practice and practice to get to the point in which they have the skill to just do something impressive within 2 hours. You try to do that in 2 hours, see what you get. $500 is nothing compared to that. But a lot of people just in our society, we have a complete disregard and misunderstanding of the rarity and difficulty of art. It is sad. But for a lot of those things, a lot of these people, quite frankly, might just end up, if you get with these kind of things, you might actually end up making a lot more money. you might be lowering the difficulty of your own work, because, suppose you have a style, and we're getting to there'll come a point in which, I'm sure of this, there'll come a point in which these algorithms are going to become very private. Right now they're kind of a little bit crazy because everybody's like, well, it's on the public internet, I can use it, right? It's no different than like if I, with my eyeballs, went and saw it and decided like I'm going to copy that style. That's not copyright infringement, except when you're using somebody's general style for a machinic thing that, let's face it, a lot of these people, they want to make money with it. They think they're going to be clever, and some of them will be clever, and they'll get away with it for a little while. But eventually, it'll come to a point in which you're going to be required by law to have permission to use people's works in your stupid algorithms. And what people will do is create their own algorithm style, and they'll, either they'll learn to train it themselves, or they'll find somebody who trains it, and you pay them and set up their own licensing for that, and you'll be able to have something like, what's the thing that's called stable diffusion, and you'll be able to, anybody can have that installed on their computer or phone, and you'll be able to pay, hey, I want to generate something under this artist, and you'll be, if you want to make something commercial with it, you're gonna have to pay a license for that per generation, and sometimes you probably for a lot of these, they won't even go that far. They'll set up their own sites. They're like, yo, you want my style? You're gonna have to pay me. And then if you want something that's you're like, oh, I like this, but I wish it was a bit more touched up. Well, then you're gonna have to pay a little bit extra, to the artist. Sure, you can generate something for $50, but hey, you want a little bit more. You want like the actual human touch. Well, the artist can do that for you. So it can be a great aid. Probably should not step on that. That feels a little bit hollow. But look at this. Quite beautiful. I've actually never been this far, quite frankly. In the past, I've made videos coming here with my dog. If you remember my fat yellow dog, my little buddy. He passed away, unfortunately. And because I, whenever I came out here, I'm like, well, poor little guy. He loves to go outside. But, he had his limit. And, I take him for, we'd only come about half an hour up the trail at most, and usually just head back. And, now it's been an hour and almost 20 minutes. So I've almost gone, 3 times the distance of any other time that I've been around here. So yeah, for normies like me, and I do have some artistic talent, but I'm not interested enough. There was a time in my life in which, admittedly, I really loved to draw. I really, really loved to draw, and I thought for a time maybe I'll be like a graphic designer for video games. That was a dream back then, right? Back in our era, we grew up with video games. They were like, oh man, wouldn't it be great to do that as a job? Thank God I didn't go into that. Nowadays, you find out like what most artists are treated like in the industry, and it is shit. If you're in it, you're usually in it because you desperately love this shit, but you are not doing well. Probably the only people doing well, to some extent, is, if you get into like art and you want to do all right, seems to be that the few things that you make money is being some kind of tattoo artist, or a pornography artist, particularly a fetish pornography artist. If you have no honor, But you know, you get your skills up to that level, people are willing to pay stupid money to feed their sick desires. So it is, so it is. Ooh, that's soggy. Can definitely feel all the water that's filtered into the soil, goes down into the water table. But yeah, for us normies, there will be a point in which anybody with any sort of creative imagination can play around with these things and make something. To me, that's exciting. I think that in our lifetimes, at least by the end of my lifetime, hopefully I make it somewhere to like around 70. And if I'm in good health, I'd like to live more. But if I'm not, I'd be good if 70 is where it stops. We will see an explosion in the creation of the individual vision of art again. Right now, movies, television shows, video games, all these things require an immense amount of collective effort. You got to get a lot of people together with a lot of commitment, and a lot of this time you need a lot of money. And I've seen this with the darndest things. Plenty of projects where people begin and they don't stick with it because there's personal problems, there's drama, there's money issues, and things just fall apart. It's very difficult for somebody who has a vision to actually get that vision done. Back in the 90s, this is actually easier. Back in the 90s when like video games were taking off, that was a much easier thing. Nowadays, it's not so much. But increasingly, as things become more and more automated in that way, the difficulty of making even just a mediocre representation of what you want, and even then to like touch things up, might just be not that much more required skill. Instead of like 10,000 hours, maybe 500 hours, to like really apply yourself and get mediocre enough to touch up the things to get them from mediocre to all right, pretty good. Ooh, managed to free that one. So you can see that's beautiful. And so, as I was saying, you will get the power back to the hands of individuals with a pure vision. And that is where the really good shit comes from. When somebody can have full control of their vision, magic happens. I know that there's a romanticization nowadays of collective creation and whatnot. There's something beautiful about this, yes, and beautiful things come out of such things unexpectedly. That is a certain kind of mode. But most of the greatest artworks don't come about collectively. They are the creations and results of a tyrannical artist who is adamant about their vision and unwilling to compromise any of it. And these people are usually insufferable to work with. They are assholes. Nobody really likes them, even when they're famous. And oh man, look at that. Stanley Kubrick was a tyrant on the set. Jodorowsky was a tyrant on the set. Tarkovsky was a tyrant on the set. And you can understand, when you have a vision, it's your vision. It's your artwork. The other people there are just there to be a creative living means to keep generating what it is that you're after. But beyond that, they have no business touching your vision. And the more people you can get out of the way, the better. We'll get to a point in which like artificial voice synthesis is gonna be damn perfect. You remember the old sci-fi things in which you just got people have these things that just copy any voice, and it does it pretty naturally. We're already pretty close to that, actually. I have no problems jumping this fence, but I'm an hour and 20 minutes on a walk, so that's probably a good thing for me to head back, and that's going to be a 3-hour walk in total. So anyways, we will have cartoon shows and movies and albums. Well, you already have albums, but music. We'll have comics and artworks in which somebody who had no trained talent in these things, besides knowing how to manipulate the algorithms to present the things that they have in their minds, is going to be able to create a full piece of work, fully animated, fully filled, visually, fully coherent enough, fully voiced, with the right emphasis. No, you're not gonna have to worry about like, you'll be able to correct all these things that are weird and real things, and you won't be limited by like, oh, I only have so many shots I can do, I only have so much time, and people only have so much patience. No, you're gonna be able to do all of that, and that will be great. That will be great. And as great as that's going to be for the average person, it's going to be even greater for anybody who has half a lick of talent. And those people who are amazing now, boy, they're going to be mind-blowing later on. If they keep up with such things, it's going to be incredible. And for the traditional arts, there'll still be a market for that. Snobs in art will still be like, oh, but my thing was fully handmade, by an artisanal craftsman. Yeah, okay, that's nice. I can see the value in that. There's a sentimental value in, just knowing that something is fully human originated. I frankly don't see much that's interesting to such things. I don't know. People were like supremacists about that. Strike me as just stupid. A lot of your imagination is just random stuff that pops up in it. You don't really. You're not. The way in which things come up in your mind is mostly accumulations of things you've already seen. The synthesis of just imagination. And just kind of you having some notion of like, oh, I like that, I don't like that, and being able to step beyond it. Other than that, whoa. Whew. Other than that, it isn't that much different than the collective memory and outlining and all these filling ins that the AI does, which is why people are impressed by it. It seems to work, just kind of like our own happenstance, random imagination. What a machine will never do is it cannot get divine inspiration, but you can. You as a human being certainly can. But anyways, this is coming down to the limit of the single video on my phone, which is 1 hour and 30 minutes. And so you can see, enjoy the view, a beautiful day. Thanks for listening to my rambling. Hopefully you found it entertaining. Well, if you made it this far, you found it entertaining, but take care. See you around.